Welcome to Autism Unmasked, the podcast that unravels the complexity of autism and brings you closer to understanding it. Now, before we get to unmasking autism, I would first like to introduce myself. I am Jayana Magadia, a multimedia arts student from De La Salle College of St. Benilde, and I'm your host for Autism Unmasked. This is part one of our interview with Miss Winnie, and today we will discuss how educators define ASD, how important it is to find the early signs of autism in a child, and ASD's relation to special education. Our guest for today is a former special education and administrative support from Right Start Child Learning and Development Center and is currently an author of textbooks, teacher manuals, and modules from University Press of First Asia and a teaching assistant from Brent International School, Manila. For today's episode, she will be sharing with us her experiences of being a special education teacher, her strategies in providing support to students with ASD, and her insights about the current state of awareness towards ASD. Welcome to the Autism Unmasked podcast, Miss Winnie Paz. Yes.
Hi. Thank
Hi.
you, Diana.
Thank you so much, Miss Winnie, for taking the time to join us today. So, I know I already introduced you to everyone, but could you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yes, I'm so surprised about your research skills. Currently, I'm still working in Brent International School, Manila, but previously I
Mm-hmm.
was in middle school. Now I'm working in the lower school department. I'm catering to grades 5 students, mostly learners with special needs, but in general, I assist a class, two classes.
Mm.
And then I've
Oh,
been in the inclusive setting for more than 10 years. So, yun. Thank you
wow.
for that.
Okay. So, you have a lot of experiences na po pala talaga. Yes.
Not really, still learning.
Miss Winnie, so as mentioned earlier, we are going to talk about your experiences na po as a special education teacher. But before that, maybe we can start with some questions that would enlighten our audience more about ASD. Let's start with the basics. With your professional expertise in special education, how would you personally define autism spectrum disorder?
Oh, I like the question because usually we just try to Google the terms. But
Yes.
in my experience, the people with autism that I have handled are those who are with difficulties in social communication, tsaka social filters.
Mm. Since you have worked with and witnessed na po yung growth of these students with ASD, would you say early intervention in the life of a child is important?
Very, very important kasi we all know that foundation of a child starts with their early years, and we need to provide support and different strategies for them to be equipped with the things that they need in order to function well as they grow older. So kapag nagkaroon na ng red flags or formally diagnosed na with autism in the early years, it's better to give early intervention to make sure that we can easily tap and make some changes dun sa development of the child.
Before I ask the next question, I want to preface it by saying that it's important to really consider the language we use when talking about different groups of people and the way we frame discussions because it can really have a big impact on those groups that are perceived and treated by society. So, with that in mind, I'm curious to know in terms of inclusivity, what are your thoughts on calling someone autistic, bipolar, or schizophrenic instead of a person with autism, person with bipolarity, or person with schizophrenia?
In general, labels naman affect identity. So, when we use the
Mhm.
appropriate terms or appropriate labels, we get to use or we get to set useful expectations, and then we also reflect positive characteristics. So, it's really better to use the appropriate terms and labels in order for us to create a positive environment. At the same time, it could lead naman to setting meaningful goals na rin if we try to use the appropriate terms.
So would you say po na it is more appropriate to use the person first language like yung person with autism po ganun?
Yes, better to use person with autism. But me personally, sometimes I still forget, but I learn how to correct myself and others as well. Because it's very important, especially if you're trying to build an inclusive environment, because it all starts with proper labeling then.
Mm. Moving on naman po, maybe we could talk about some of your experiences na and insights as a special education teacher. What challenges have you faced from teaching special education and how did you overcome these challenges?
In all situations naman, there are some things that you cannot control. And in the field of special education, medyo maraming things that you cannot control. One of the goals kasi is to make sure that there is consistency with all the strategies and supports. Consistency meaning whatever support that you give in school, you need to make sure that it also goes to at home or outside school.
Mm-mm.
And sometimes, hindi nangyayari yung kasi they have a different setup at home. They have a different setup outside school. Pag ganung mga bagay, we try to provide different alternatives dun sa parents or dun sa mga people involved dun sa team. Whatever it is resources that they have at home or available, yun na lang yung gagamitin dun sa pag-approach dun sa bata. Just to make sure na may continuity yung intervention na binibigay dun sa learner with difficulties.
So it's more on yung pagpasa po siguro ng responsibilities as a teacher to the guardians of the children, no?
Yes, and it's a two-way then. I'm not saying naman na it's only from the school to the
Mm-hmm.
house. It's also from the house going to the school because there are also times na in the school, teachers cannot provide everything. The school cannot provide everything. And halimbawa, may mga schools na walang OT. Outside pa yung OT. So, kailangan
Mm.
constant collaboration with all the teams na kasali dun sa progress ng bata.
Okay. So, since you shared these challenges po na you have faced in teaching, how have you overcome these challenges? And what do you think po are some qualities a special education teacher should have to overcome these challenges?
I have learned how to have a good perspective taking. So when you say perspective taking, you have the ability to understand how a situation appears to another person and then how that person would react to that certain situation. It's not just
Mm.
learning, understanding kung ano yung nakikita ng child with difficulty, but how the people around him see the whole situation. So
Mhm.
it's, as I've mentioned earlier, it's a team effort at a collaboration. So you also need to understand where the parents are coming from, where the classmates are coming from, where are the friends coming from. And then you have to make sure that everything is balanced as a teacher. So you can control a little bit of the environment and make sure na nakakapag-adjust yung everyone, not just learner-centered, but it's a community-centered.
Mm. Yeah, that's nice po. Lahat po talaga kailangan mag-work to really make it work for the student with ASD po, no?
Yes,
So,
exactly.
yes. As a teacher, maybe you have also observed the environment in schools, including policies and procedures implemented by DepEd or CHED. And with that being said, can you share your perspective on the current state of inclusivity in schools?
This is a delicate issue kasi
Yeah.
sometimes it all boils down to public versus private. And I really don't have any experiences yet sa public. Ang naging experience ko lang sa public school setup is my internship. And I would have to say that the school that I work with, very organized naman sila. Nakaseparate
Mm-mm.
yung center nila within the school. And then they can only provide limited resources. So ang kinikater lang nila are yung mga developmentally challenged. Kaya yung mga physical challenges lang tulad ng blind, ng
Mm.
deaf. Kasi yun lang yung napoprovide nilang resources. Pero when it comes to other difficulties tulad ng ADHD, tapos learners with autism, I think kailangan pa ng more training kasi it's something na kailangan na diagnose ng medical doctor, and yung autism and ADHD and other neurodevelopmental disorders. Compared mo kasi yung deaf and blind, very common yung mga ganong difficulties
Yeah.
nila. sa learners with autism and ADHD. So, iba yung resources na kailangan i-provide. And yung, I think, the experience ko sa public school, very limited yung resources na nare-receive nila. Sa private school, I think they have freedom to be more flexible in terms of providing resources and also having connections sa professionals. Yun yung nakita kong difference. Pero when I see them all together, I think both sides naman are trying to provide and trying to do their best to make sure that they provide and cater to learners with special needs.
A follow-up question naman po to that. Considering your answer to the previous question, how significant do you think po is the role of education in shaping the lives of children with ASD?
Very, very important in the sense na you're creating a support system and a safe environment for for everybody to make sure na yung inclusion ng school. So it's not just providing the needs of learners with difficulty, but it's also making sure that everyone is aware on how to approach and also how to make sure na they themselves, yung mga neurotypical learners, when you say neurotypical, yung mga hindi diagnosed, na nakaka-adjust din sila.
As a special education teacher naman po, what strategies do you use to address the wide range of learning needs among students with ASD?
As a SPED teacher kasi we don't diagnose. We rely on the assessment of doctors. So what we need to make sure, if we see some red flags, we go to a certain process. We refer them to the doctor and then we wait for the formal assessment. And then after we have pinpoint yung areas of improvement, mga strategies and tools to tailor fit to their learning needs. So kung halimbawa, executive function skills siya, or mga skills na may kinalaman sa completing multiple tasks, self-regulation, or socialization skills, i-tailor fit namin na doon yung mga strategies na kailangan. So pwedeng mag-focus lang kami sa social skills. If it's academic, we could prepare challenging activities, a little bit of advanced that could tweak their interest. Or kung social skills, we could integrate peer-mediated intervention. And then we could also provide different kinds of opportunities for the child depending on dun sa needs or diagnose ng doctor sa kanila.
Oh, so as a teacher po, you really go one-on-one with your students by implementing what they really need, ganun po.
Yes, it depends on the level of support. So, there are times na pwedeng monitoring lang yung kailangan ng student, ng learner with ASD. Pwedeng kailangan niya ng push and support. When you say push and support, apart from the main teacher, meron pa siyang shadow teacher inside the classroom. Or pwede namang full-out support, meaning meron mo siyang support inside the classroom, and then after school, meron pa siyang different sessions na ina-attendan to equip him on how to be flexible inside the classroom. So, depende dun sa needs ng bata.
Thank you for sharing your insights on ASD and your experiences with special education, Ms. Winnie. We'll be continuing this discussion on the next part of Autism Unmasked. Stay tuned, listeners!